According to AoE2 DE achievement stats, only 25% of players have eaten 2 wild boars during the Dark Age. And yet somehow, more players have managed to kill 25 units with trebuchets. Something is wrong in the world, and this video is going to fix it. This is either because players don't mechanically know how boar luring works, or they just don't think it's worthwhile doing. Whatever the case, the noobs are about to get schooled in what is going to be the most complete, the most comprehensive final boar video in the entire universe. By the time you're finished here, you'll know absolutely everything there is to know and more. Please, pick up your doctorate on the way out. This is probably going to be a very long video, so I've added timestamps for different sections in the description. The fat pig is an amazing source of food in the early game. I'm going to explain in detail about why taking them is so valuable later on in the video. But for those of you who just want to know how to lure the goddamn boar, let's start there. The technique to luring your boar is fairly straightforward, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. I'm going to show you 3 lures. One for 5-year-olds, one for teenagers, and one for grown adults, each with more attention to detail. First, you want to send a villager to attack the boar. When the villager has shot it, you'll then need to tell the villager to run back to the town centre. At this point, there should be at least 6 villagers at the town centre so that they can kill it quickly when it arrives. In DE, you only need to shoot the boar once for it to follow you the whole way back to the TC. In earlier versions of the game, you needed to shoot it twice. As you get close to the town centre, you want to select the villagers which are gathering and tell them to attack the boar, trying to kill it under the town centre so that villagers don't have to walk to drop off the food. Once the boar is dead, the villagers will automatically gather from it, and don't forget to tell the villager you lured it with to gather as well. And there you go. Simple, painless boar luring in action. Now we know the fundamentals, we're going to start thinking further ahead to make life easier for ourselves. Let's start by organising our town centre space. Villagers should only be gathering from 1 sheep at a time. This is for 2 reasons. 1, to minimise wasted food to rot, and 2, even more importantly, to keep our town centre space clear. This is so that when we bring the boar into the town centre, the villager has a clear path where they can walk under it. This is where we want the boar to be killed. Not here, or over here, but here, right under the TC where villagers can drop food without having to spend a second walking. Another thing to do is think about your boar location in relation to your town centre, and then move your sheep to the opposite side. Keep your sheep out from under the town centre, and then move them in one by one to be killed. You have to remember to bring the sheep in, but it isn't too hard. Just keep the sheep in a line so that when the villagers finish with one, they only have a single choice of which one to take next. For the next level, we're going to use hotkeys to help us to lure the boar more safely and effectively. First, we're going to set our town centre gather point to the boar. We do this with the gather point hotkey, which is T by default. Click on the boar and the next villager created will go out to take it. You also have to use the gather point hotkey for this. Just right clicking on the boar doesn't work, as it will instead tell the town centre to attack the boar, which of course it can't do. The next thing we'll do is create a control group for the villager as it is created. I like to use control group 2 personally, since my scout is usually control grouped to 1. Select the villager, press Ctrl and 2. This will allow us to look away and continue scouting while the villager heads out to the boar. We can quickly double tap 2 to return our view to the villager. One of the most common causes of death is forgetting about the villager that's been sent out. And my only advice for that is to try not to have the memory of a goldfish, and you'll be fine. But don't worry, it happens to all of us. Practice and more practice will help you out. Send the villager back to the town centre as usual, only this time, as the villager pulls the boar under the TC, you're going to garrison inside it with T. You can also use Alt if that floats your boat. This will make the boar lose aggro on the villager and sit underneath the town centre. The boar will then chill out for a bit before running back to its original spot. This gives you time to select the other villagers and wait for them to finish up the sheep they're gathering before attacking the boar. 0 food wastage, happy days. If your boar timing is spot on, then this won't be necessary, as the vills gathering from the sheep should finish the sheep at around the same time as the boar arrives. In this case, you can attack the boar as it runs in and then garrison the luring villager to safety. You can also utilize control groups further and set a control group for the villagers gathering from the sheep as well. This will make selecting them a little bit less fiddly. When you do the second boar lure, you may have a low HP villager or two already under the TC. The last thing you want is to have the boar change aggro onto a low HP vill. Make sure to check the HP bars of the villagers when you select them, and then further garrison villagers inside when you see that there may be a low HP one at the front. Sometimes, you don't always have many villagers to kill the boar with. You could, for instance, be playing Nomad and see a boar close by, but have very few sheep available. In this case, it's possible to use the method for those that live life in the fast lane. Garrison all of your villagers in the town centre, and then use the town centre to shoot the boar. You have to be extremely careful with this method, as if the town centre gets the last hit, the boar will die. And by that, I mean that it will die so hard that it won't actually have any food in it. Make sure to ungarrison before this happens, and then finish the kill with the villagers. I wouldn't recommend this method in normal situations. You should very, very rarely lose a villager to the boar if you learn how to do it right, and the risks of killing it with the town centre just isn't really worth it. We're going to look at lots more tricks to help with luring later, but first, a message from our friendly neighbourhood scout.
Eating all that juicy boar meat is fantastic, but you have to find the bleeders first.
And that is where the scout comes in. Scouting for boar quickly is important. I'm going to tell you how to find them effectively every time. On standard DE maps, boar will spawn in a square band between 16 and 19 tiles from the centre of your town centre. This isn't very far, and should be straightforward to find whether you use sheep scouting or not. First, make a single ring around your town centre with the scout. This should uncover your starting sheep and berries. Then, on your second ring, you should find the boar 99% of the time. Be sure to scout without overlapping your already scouted area as much as possible. And if you can try sheep scouting, then it definitely helps a lot with uncovering the map at the start of the game. Don't do this. Your boar isn't over there. It's right here. If you don't see the boar still, then it could be under a black spot which you missed. They can be hiding under a single black tile, but fortunately for us, they also move around randomly, sometimes even walking into an explored area. Watch closely, but also don't be afraid to send a sheep out to scout any black patches if you suspect that a boar could be lurking below. Now in Definitive Edition, the devs changed the map scripts so that boar spawn consistently closer to your town centre, but that doesn't mean that you can't have a tricky time. Sometimes, the boar is behind a woodline or at the top of a hill where you risk taking extra damage on being attacked. A villager without loom can only survive 4 tusk smashes to the shins before dying. Our villager can make it 34 tiles before death when running in a perfectly straight line. This is almost double that of the boar spawn distance from your town centre, so most of the time loom is not needed, but in the case that you do need that extra distance, then you can make the run 57 tiles with loom. If a villager is attacked downhill, then they do take 25% more damage, dying in just 3 hits if they're all downhill hits. If there's only 1 downhill hit, then your villager will survive the 3 hits with only 1 HP remaining. In the case that you have a bumpy path back to your town centre where it could be likely for the boar to hit you on a downhill slope, then I would recommend looming up just to be on the safe side. So, up until this point, we've only been discussing boar. But what about the huntable elephants and rhino? Well, they function the same as boar, and you absolutely should be taking them. Not only that, but they also contain 60 more food. However, this extra food does come at a cost. We'll talk about the impact of the extra food later, but first we need to look at how luring these beasts is much more dangerous. Testing the villager run with an elephant, and we see that our poor test subject meets her fate after fleeing just 26 tiles, a whole 8 tiles less than the boar. This gives you a lot less room for error, as both the elephant and the rhino will kill your villagers in much shorter distances. Be extra careful with these and get loom first if there's even the slightest hint that it could be a dicey one. Even though elephants have exactly the same move speed and attack damage as boar, their attack animation is much shorter. The time between attacking and moving again is considerably less, making them do more damage in a shorter distance. The same is true of rhinos, so watch out for them too. But you know, if you do lose a villager to a boar, it's not the end of the world. You can still recover. However, if you need some more cheering up, then just remember that the boar is no easy opponent. It's also stronger than all of these guys. It's time to learn even more advanced methods of boar luring. We're just getting started. They don't call it the art of boar for nothing. Blocking is a micro skill which can have various uses, but in the context of boar luring, it can definitely help you out. I can take the villager all the way to the end of the track without taking a single hit point of damage by using the scout to intercept the boar as it closes in on the villager. By moving the scout just inside the boar's hitbox, it makes it slow down as it tries to path around the scout. But you don't even need to move in front of it. Just bumping the side of the boar is enough to slow it down. Be careful not to attack the boar with the scout though, otherwise the boar may switch aggro and damage your scout. This is an undesirable outcome. Anyway, you can use this trick to save a villager if your goldfish memory strikes and you remember to check your villager too late. If your scout happens to be nearby, maybe he finally gets to be the hero of this story. If in doubt and you've got no scout, then there's another trick you can use to save your villager from certain death. In Definitive Edition, this works a little different and is harder to do than in older versions. If you place a palisade or house down at just the right time between your villager and the boar, then you can force the boar to path around it, allowing you to widen the gap and buy some more time to escape. If you get it right, you can even lose aggression completely. Ever taken 2 boar and thought to yourself that it just isn't enough? That you could easily go for round 3 or 4 because your insatiable appetite for spit-roasted pig just can't be satisfied? Well, fear no more, because why settle for 2 pigs when you can make your opponent's pigs yours? I might get some flack for teaching you how to lame your opponent, but I do it from time to time. I even did it to Onlu the other day. He wasn't pleased.
Okay, but whatever the hell is going... Lamer! I thought you were above this.
There are 2 types of laming you can do that involve huntable animals. The first is to steal, which is to use your scout to attack your enemy boar and then bring it back over the map for yourself. This requires a lot more focus than a regular lure because your scout moves much faster than a villager. If you simply right-click back to your base, then the boar will stop chasing and run back. You need to keep the boar close, but not too close, as you really don't want to take damage on your scout either. It is possible to get the boar to chase you, and also take no damage at all if you run away at just the right millisecond. However, most of the time your scout will take a hit, but that's a worthwhile trade. Your opponent will see their boar disappearing into the fog as they wallow in misery at having precious meat stolen from them. What's probably more important is that I teach you how to defend against this type of laming. The first thing to do is always prioritize taking your front boar first, and if both boar are forward, then taking the furthest boar first. It's much more likely that your opponent will find this one and attempt to steal it before any others if they are that way inclined. The second type of laming is to tamper with your opponent's boar luring villager. You can either attack them at the same time as they lure, so the villager takes more damage and dies, Or you can use blocking to get in front of the villager and then let the boar do the dirty work. I prefer the second method. Keeps the sword clean. You can also use this method of blocking in reverse to protect from a boar steal. You always see your boar running away in the fog, or sometimes they'll steal it from right under your nose. Either way, you should bring your scout over as fast as you can to intercept the stealer. Once you catch up, you can try to block their scout so that the boar damages them. They will then either give up or possibly lose their scout if this works. Alternatively, you can try to attack their scout. Since they can't just run in a straight line without losing the boar aggro, their scout will be moving more slowly across the map, allowing you to get some extra hits in. Finally, if none of that works, then you can attempt to also attack the boar yourself to make it switch aggro to you, or block the boar by bumping into it so that it loses aggro on the enemy scout. It's really worth saying that laming is not something you should find yourself doing often. It's really worthwhile to scout your own map well first before heading out to scout your opponent. If your opponent has a front boar and they still haven't taken it by the time you find them, then maybe you can consider taking it for yourself. But if you do want to improve at the game, then I would definitely say to focus on yourself and perfect your early game before going off to tamper with someone else's. If you're enjoying this video, why not subscribe? Your support really motivates me to keep making more content. All of this extensive information about how to lure the boar, and we haven't talked about the reasons why you should take them in the first place. Well, that's what we're going to cover in the next part of the video. Some players don't think that taking the boar is worth it, when after all they could just make farms. Well, that's hogwash. In many cases, when you want to rush your enemy, then reaching the feudal age quickly is super important. The boar are one of the best resources available to you in the Dark Age to do exactly that. The boar gather rate is 0.41 food per second, compared to sheep at 0.33 food per second, or berries at 0.31 food per second. That's a 24.2% increase compared to sheep, and a 32.2% increase compared to the berries. In isolation, if we use 8 villagers gathering from sheep, it takes them 3 minutes and 19 seconds to gather 500 food. Doing the same with boar takes just 2 minutes and 42 seconds. That's a 37 seconds difference, and 37 seconds in which you could train one extra scout in the feudal age and grab an advantage over your opponent. As players start to get better at the game, all of these small savings really start to compound. It's what makes the difference between the rungs on the ladder. As for Black Forest no rush games, the same can be said about your feudal timing being important, but switch out the scout with getting a couple of upgrades or reaching the castle age a few seconds earlier. And for those that prefer to just farm, here's another example. Let's say instead of taking a boar, you built farms instead. How would that look? Well, first you would need to gather the wood to build the farms. Once the sheep run out, you'll need to have at least 480 wood in the bank so that each of your 8 villagers that would typically gather from the boar have a farm to go to. This means that you need a lot of villagers chopping wood instead of gathering food. Using this method of seeding farms and not taking boar, without breaking villager production, I can click up to the feudal age at the earliest in 9 minutes and 20 seconds. If I do the same, but take my boar instead, I can click up at 7 minutes and 3 seconds. And this was by no means a perfect execution. Basically, farming is much slower. This is why we see so many new players smashing their berry bushes with 10 villagers, because boar are important to your early economy. I've talked about decay and rot a number of times already. As you may know, animal carcasses slowly lose food over time after they've been killed. The decay rate for boars is actually higher than that of sheep or deer, so it's very important that you maximize the number of villagers taking the boar. This is usually why you see players focusing on the boar instead of splitting the vills onto sheep at the same time. Here's a graph that I made showing the percentage decay of food versus the number of villagers gathering. This graph assumes that the villagers are gathering from the animal for its entire lifespan, or death span, whatever it is. Sheep and deer stop at 8 because you can only fit 8 villagers around them, whereas boar can fit up to 11. The point is, the more villagers collecting, the less decay you have, and since boar decay the fastest, it's wise to focus on them first. Also shown here is the Mongol boar, which experiences less decay thanks to their hunt speed bonus. Juicy. There are 3 civs which have a bonus affecting their boar. The first and most obvious are the Mongols, who get a 50% faster hunt-gather rate. This also applies to deer as well, by the way. This is the fastest source of food income possible in the Dark Age, and it's one of the reasons that makes Mongols such a strong rush civ. They can advance to the feudal age with fewer villagers and attack much sooner with scouts than otherwise possible. This faster gather speed also reduces the amount of decay that happens, as you saw earlier. Once the villagers finish gathering the boar, they can go back to taking sheep or doing other things. The Mayans benefit from 20% longer lasting resources. This means that they get even more out of the boar. Maybe they grind up the bones or find some extra nutrition in there or something. Taking decay into account, this works out to be about 40 extra food for boar and 50 extra food for elephants. It's not a huge amount, but it's definitely a nice to have. Finally, the Goths, and their anti-bonus, as I like to call it. You have no idea how many times this bonus has tripped me up. It's actually pretty good if you remember that your villagers will kill the boar very quickly. If you forget like me and end up killing the boar outside of your town centre, then that's annoying. On the plus side though, the bonus damage helps you to kill the boar faster and spend more time gathering. And it reduces the HP loss on villagers as they don't get time to attack back. And that is a pork wrap. The revolution starts here. No longer do the noobs need to cower in fear when the boars come near. No more will innocent villagers be slain to these beasts. We will overcome the challenges and face the adversity. Tweet me at ZeroEmpires with a picture of a dead boar under your town centre. Use the hashtag BoarVolution and let's show the world how it's done. This video was getting really long, so I moved these bits to the end. Villagers will carry much more food than normal when gathering from hunter boars compared to berries or sheep. Usually villagers will only carry 10 food from sheep, but when gathering from boar they carry 35. This is important to know since you should always be looking to keep producing villagers at the town centre. You may have to force drop resources from the boar gatherers in order to keep this up. Also, don't worry if you then tell a villager to gather from a sheep after they've loaded up on boar meat. In DE, the villager would drop the food first before moving to take the sheep. In previous games, food would have been lost. However, if you do tell a villager full on boar to chop wood, then they will lose the food when they're heading over once they start chopping. Always remember to drop resources first before sending villagers to do another task. This applies across the board. There is actually a third method of laming boar, walling your villager in and then attacking the boar so that it can't kill you. This allows you to send just a single villager forward and get the kill safely, but has the drawback of not allowing you to get the meat either. There are 3 different units which all share the same wild boar sprite: the regular boar, the javelina, and the iron boar. The javelina is identical to the boar other than its name. It can be found on maps with a South American theme, such as Yucatan. The iron boar, on the other hand, is much stronger and yields 700 food when killed. It was added to the game as flavor as part of the campaigns. Boar have a hidden bonus 4 and 3 attack against eagle warriors and scouts respectively. This was added to the game to help prevent laming due to how much more dangerous the boar became. It hasn't changed anything though, and laming is just as prevalent as ever. Alright, we're done. We're finished. That's it. Final bit. All done. It's over. See you next time.